All right, let's see. We're all over 60 participants so far. We're going to go ahead and start. I've got a few moderator notes to cover in the beginning while people are coming in. I want to remind everybody to keep your cameras turned off to kind of help us on bandwidth. So we're going to keep all of our panelists visible for the whole time. So try and conserve some bandwidth and keep your cameras off. And you should be muted coming into the room. So be sure that you are muted so we can kind of cut back on background noise. As we're going through, you can type questions into the chat or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to try and plug into questions. I have to do the introduction of our panelists, and I've got a few questions to kind of get the conversation started. So from there, but this is the Future of Traffic Management Centers panel discussion. We do have brief introductions from everyone, a few presentations in the beginning, but we're going to get into some really good conversation about how we think transportation management centers are going to look in the future and what type of changes are we already seeing, are we anticipating, are we starting to plan for, and hear from our out-of-state panelists. And also we have some from North Carolina, and we're also representing DOTs and local agencies on the panel. So a really good cross-section of experience and ideas on the panel. And a few other reminders for the conference. Reminder, there's a $5 raffle supporting the scholarships. Buy that for a $100 Amazon gift card. And then after this session is a happy hour, the virtual happy hour that's going to be happening after this session. And I'll recap that at the end when we're closing out. So with that, we're going to start with our introductions. Going in order here, and we'll start with Jorge Rivera.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, my name is Jorge Riveros. I am currently employed by Metro Nashville Public Works. I'm the chief engineer here. Interestingly, we don't have a TMC yet. We're embarking on that journey here. But previous to that, I worked for the city of Austin. And during that time, I did oversee the management of the Transportation Management Center that we had for the city of Austin. And also at times in coordination with the county and the state at one of our larger regional operations centers. So got a little bit of background there. I'm not going to belabor it too much and give too much, but I've been in civil engineering practice for a little over 20 years, kind of run the gamut from anywhere from maintenance and operations to ITS communications, just about everything that you can think of, I've probably done. Pretty much been in local government most of my career, done some private work, have worked for the state and other types of agencies. So kind of a good broad cross section. And most recently, before I came to Nashville about a year ago, I was, like I said, employed by the city of Austin, not only working in arterial management and overseeing the TMC, but also smart mobility. So connected vehicle deployments for the city of Austin and other emerging technologies. So kind of, again, a really broad cross section. I think that, this is going to be a really great panel. We had a great discussion the other day as we prepared. And so I think you're really going to enjoy what this panel has to offer, as Jeff said, from a state and local perspective and everything that's been going on. So thank you to this panel. Thank you to the people who are joining us today. And I really look forward to hearing from, not only my peers, but just, you as the community and seeing what we're doing with the future of TMCs. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jorge. I also forgot we popped up our first poll we're going to have during the session. So I see people are already responding to that, but please see the poll up there and give some feedback. Looks like we've got a pretty good cross section of people that are actually operating TMC so far, 88% of our attendance so far. So I'm curious to watch that. Next introduction will be Aaron Raymond with Michigan DOT.
Yes, good afternoon. Sorry, I was trying to get my share screen ready, but hi, Aaron Raymond with Michigan Department of Transportation. I am the manager of our Southeast Michigan Transportation Operations Center, located behind me somewhere in this picture of downtown Detroit. Is where we're located. And so I have been with the state for 16 years. Been in my current position as manager for just over 3. In the ITS/traffic operations world for about 6 of my 16 years at the state. The rest, as Jorge kind of mentioned with himself, was in a variety of different positions, construction, maintenance, etc. So primarily state government, but I'm excited to be here today and talk about the future of TMC. So before moving on, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a quick little presentation I have here of, let me see if I can get it to work. Pulling it over to this screen here of what our operations center looks like. So let's start from the beginning, maybe. All right, can we see that okay?
Yeah, it's showing your view of the PowerPoint. You might have to share the other screen.
Let's try that then. Let's see, screen 1. No, you're showing this screen. I know I need screen 2. That better?
Yep, there you go.
All right. So this is the front-facing view of our operations center video wall, and this area down here is where my traffic operations specialists who kind of manage the day-to-day of the operation sit. Looking from the video wall to the back, in the back here is where Michigan State Police Dispatch sits. We are co-located, so there's a lot of great conversation that happens over the wall. And so I'm going to do this very quickly, but certainly if anybody has questions, let me know. This is Michigan, obviously here. Still part of it has snow up here in the UP, but down here in Metro Detroit, it's clear of snow, thankfully. But we manage Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb counties, which is about 70% of all the traffic in the state centered in that area there. So we do have a TOC out here in the Grand area, West Michigan, one that handles in the green most of the rest of the state, and then one here in St. Clair County for Blue Water Bridge, which is international bridge crossing. You know, pretty standard operations center. We have 400 miles of freeway and handle these various things between, you know, as I mentioned, co-located with Michigan State Police. We're involved in all types of congestion mitigation efforts. And then we have freeway courtesy patrol. So I'll talk about that briefly in a second here. So just real quickly, we have 136, actually 150 message signs now with the new project that's went on board, 350 cameras, various microwave vehicle detection. Not listed on here, but all over the place are roadside units for connected vehicle in pretty much every mile of freeway and most of our arterials as well. We're 24/7 and do a lot of outreach with our local agencies that are not co-located with us. So we're pretty active. Just a quick little kind of snapshot of what we do here. And then probably one of the things that I think we are being most innovative on right now is our freeway courtesy patrol. A lot of places have freeway courtesy patrol. We utilize them extensively, though, not necessarily just for motorist assistance, but we actually, in the last 2 years, have upgraded our fleet to include traffic incident response trailers here. And the first year we had these, we used it about 35 times. In the last year, we called them out 121 times. Michigan State Police loves these things, and anytime they can get them out here for an incident that's going to last under 2 hours, this has made our crash scenes a lot safer, and they are very happy about that, and they are getting utilized quite often. So if anybody has questions or interest in knowing more about these traffic trailers and how we put them together, feel free to reach out. So I think I rushed through it, but that's kind of just want to give a little snapshot of what SEMTAC is and what we're doing there.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I know at our recent workshop, the Michigan State Police was singing the praises of the Freeway Courtesy Patrol. I think she said it 3 times in about 10 minutes. So it's always great to hear the partners recognizing the Freeway Service Patrol and the Courtesy Patrol support for incident management.
Mm-hmm.
All right, continuing on, David Spencer with Town of Cary.
Great, I get to follow Michigan DOT. Fantastic. So we don't have nearly as much as Michigan, but Cary, I feel like we're a pretty progressive system. We Cary is a, if you're not familiar, is in central North Carolina, is a growing near mid-size municipality, still a town. We got about 170,000 folks that live there. We operate a traffic signal system that has 215 traffic signals that is not just in Cary. We also operate and maintain signals in 4 of our neighboring municipalities as well. Not all of them for them, just we have a few in each of them. We do have 166 CCTV cameras at those 215 intersections. So we got some pretty good coverage there. We put a lot of our focus into making sure we have camera coverage throughout town. Every single one of our signals is connected to our central system. Almost all of them are by fiber, I think with the exception of 3. So we've got a little over 100 miles of fiber in town. And you know, we have a burgeoning ITS program for a municipality our size. We collect a lot of data. We collect traffic counts at all of our signals once every 3 years, and we use that for all of our signal timing. We're folding in ATSPM, looking at a system-wide application here very soon. And we'll talk about a little bit more about some other things we're doing, but I will say that we are part of our award-winning Connected Cary program, which is our Smart Cities application. And our Smart Cities we're pretty proud of, pretty happy with. It is a data-driven group that focuses on sharing data. It's breaking people out of silos and putting all that data together so everybody can use it. So we're working with all of our other departments to share the data we have and to get the data that they're using to help each other out with everything we have available to us. So a lot of our data is put in GIS online, and it's available. We're pushing it out to the public here through our Connect Cary site. As far as our role within our traffic management center, we're a little bit different than a lot of other municipalities. Our engineering staff is sort of separate from so that's more of our operations side. Our maintenance and construction staff is in our public works department. So we have different leadership, but we work together pretty well. We're actually growing that connection a little bit with one another as we are introducing more ITS. For a system our size, we've got about 2 staff members on the operating side, and we've got about 10 folks down in our maintenance and construction group. Our CCTV cameras are, have access to our 911 center, and our 311 center has access to all of our cameras. Our 911 and 311 is 24 hours. We're not. We are a typical 7 a.m., 6 p.m. Monday through Friday operation, but they have access to those usage after hours. And our fire department also has some level of access to our cameras as well. It helps them with route planning. One thing I did want to touch on, some interesting things we got coming up is we are awarding a cell-based connected vehicle system that we're looking to roll out municipality-wide or system-wide, really. And also, again, I touched on a citywide ATSPM system that we've run 3 pilots on now. So we're looking at hopefully putting in a full system here, maybe later on this year. And I also want to note a side note, it's not a TMC related thing, but as far as innovative stuff, we are looking to develop a proactive traffic calming program using that's data driven, using probe data that there's other people in here that have been doing that or have something similar to that and they have some suggestions. We'd be happy to work with y'all. Thanks.
Great, thanks, David. Aaron, I did have one question pop up for you in the chat. Expand on the 24/7 field maintenance. Is a TMC staff 24/7 or are there field crews that perform maintenance around the clock or just an emergency response for maintenance?
Yeah, I saw the question there. So our TMC is staffed 24/7 along obviously with Michigan State Police Dispatch. And we have Freeway Courtesy Patrol 24/7, 365 as well. Field maintenance is not. It really just depends. If we have a major outage of our system or some of our impacts to our ATMS system, they may be called out to investigate, and they're on call, but they're not really performing the routine maintenance 24/7. That's more just a standard work week type stuff. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
Mhm.
All right, and our final introduction, Jennifer Portanova, NCDOT. Yeah, I can't hear you. Can't hear you, Jennifer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, somebody keeps muting me on my phone and I can't get it unmuted. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I've got something to pull up now. I've got too much technology to do. All right. Okay, I'm ready now, and I'm gonna try to keep this within 5 minutes. I am the systems operations engineer at NCDOT. I have a group that's signal system timing and a group that's traffic operations, and I'm also working on a planning for operations group. The only reason I know this statistic that I'm about to say is because I just had to mention it last week, but it's been 26 years now since I graduated college. And I have been with the DOT for 18 years, and I've been in traffic operations the majority of my career with DOT, which has been about 10 years. And I've had several positions here, the ITS operations engineer, the traffic operations engineer, and now the systems operations engineer, and they all sound the same. I'm pretty much doing the same thing, just a different ways of the same job, but I love it. For those of you that know me, know that I really love what I do. But let me talk about this, what we do here. So if you're from North Carolina, you're familiar with this, but if you're not, we manage pretty much 80,000 plus miles of roadway in our state. And we have about 4 regional TMCs. One shares the statewide operations center in Raleigh with our Triangle TMC. Our regional TMCs are, last year we had some challenges with cash flow, and we had to actually bring some of our regional TMC operations back to Raleigh. Hope to bring those back, but these are the locations. This map shows where we have TMCs and where we have our Safety Service Patrol, which we call IMAP, across the state on our interstate systems. And some pictures here below. Our Joint Force headquarters is also a co-located facility with EM, Highway Patrol, and the National Guard. And just to bring us back to the basics of what a TMC is the purpose is, you know, of course, they're responding to incidents by managing traffic, also communicating with our Service Patrol or IMAP and dispatching them. They're the communication hub between what's going on in the field. They're putting information out on our drivenc.gov website that tells, you know, what roads are closed in our state. This information goes out to the navigation companies. They're involved during emergency, you know, whether it's snow or hurricanes. So that's just like the basics of what we do today. And I just wanted to share some of the things that we're thinking about or working on piloting for some of the future innovations. Drones has been a hot topic for several years now. We actually did use drones during a Hurricane Florence, where we didn't have cameras. We were able to put drones out and actually see what was going on the roadway. We're actually working on a pilot project with tether drones on our IMAP trucks to see what kind of value those have. We invested a couple years ago, we invested in drones for the Highway Patrol for accident reconstruction. And we're hoping that you know, would allow us to be able to use the drones to see some impacts to the incident. Sometimes we have competing agendas or priorities where they want to see what's going on in the accident scene, and we're interested in what's going on with traffic or the impacts of that accident or crash. And so that's why we're going to pilot the tether drones with IMAP to see if they might have a benefit for us. Back to hurricane response, there's new tools out there that help predict what might be flooded in the future. If you look on this picture, you see actually a drone picture in the right-hand side and our high-tech map at the bottom on the desk. We have invested in some technology that help with this mapping. At the time, written maps were the most effective use. And then we're piloting, soon to be piloting a tool, Waycare. They claim to be able to do predictive traffic, and we hope to see if that's true. With this pilot, there will be in-vehicle units for both our IMAP and our Highway Patrol, a couple of units, to see how we might be able to use this predictive traffic information to provide the resources in the right places. And then there's Waze. We've been partners with Waze for a couple years now, but the information that we get is not as integrated as we'd like for it to be. We get our information sometimes for detection of incidents through emails versus more of integration between our systems and theirs. And so we hope to be able to integrate our systems better, provide better information about what's going on to Waze and other mapping companies if we're better integrated. And then connected and autonomous vehicles is the biggest discussion of the day of how do we use that information and that data, the TMCs. We've piloted with a company, Wejo, or we didn't pilot, the Eastern Corridor Coalition did, and we worked with them to see what kind of traffic volume data you could get from connected vehicles. There's also, the discussion about what kind of information that we would be using in the TMCs with all that data. Also related to data and work zones, smart work zones provide a lot of data with sensors, and we're trying to figure out what we do with that information, how we can use it in the TMCs. And then color DMSs, which is clearly not North Carolina signed, but those are coming to North Carolina. And so the question is how do we use color DMS differently? And then how long do we think we might actually need to keep deploying DMSs out when we have connected technology? So that is the end of my presentation. I think I did it within 5 minutes too.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. So I'm going to start off with a couple questions, and again, use the chat if you want to chime into the questions, ask add-ons, ask other questions. As you can see for our audience, had about a little over 30 people respond, and 84% of the people are actually work for agencies that manage TMCs or operate TMCs. And we're predominantly focused on vehicles right now. Very little, no transit or bicyclists, but also looking at pedestrians. So give the panelists an idea of a cross-section of the audience here. So my first question for our panelists is, what emerging technologies are you excited about, and how do you expect those technologies to impact the role of the operators within the TMC?
Well, I'll jump on something just based on the results of that. We see that hardly anybody does anything outside of the vehicles in their TMCs right now. And I think that needs to change. I know on a statewide level, that might be a little more difficult, but on a municipal level, I think there's a lot of opportunities to do things for bike and ped with a connected vehicle system that we're looking at now. You can do the regular stuff like SPAT and emergency vehicle preemption, and that's great. But we're interested in things safety-wise, as far as protections for pedestrians and bicycles throughout the system, speeding in school zones, things like that. I'm less excited about big data and being able to trim a second or two here and there than I am to give pedestrians more safety as they're walking, particularly in an area like ours that has a growing downtown. If I can reach a driver inside their vehicle to let them know that there's a pedestrian that wants to cross the street, a cyclist that is getting ready to turn in front of them, or a pedestrian has pushed the push button while they're trying to make a permissive left turn, to give that pedestrian a better chance of surviving is much more impactful to me. And I think as a group that works with managing traffic, that we need to branch out from doing things other than just vehicles. There's a lot of folks out there that want to do something else. In particular, speeding. You know, we can look at all the safety stats. We know that speeding is one of the leading causes for fatalities on our roadways, right? You know, we have an opportunity with reaching into people's vehicles and giving them information about what they're doing at that time, and maybe they should be paying a little bit more attention to something else. And that's why we're excited about speeding in school zones, because we see school zone flashers are really just not that effective at getting people to slow down in schools. We have some school zones where the 85th percentile speed is 25 miles an hour over the school zone. So, you know, I'm more excited about what we can do for other modes of transportation rather than just vehicles.
But while we're on the pedestrian topic or discussion point about other things, I mean, certainly anytime that there's a pedestrian, whether it be on a freeway, an arterial, whether it be at an actual crossing or a mid-block crossing, whatever it is, their chances in a crash with a vehicle are low, survival rate. So certainly, even here in Michigan, that's a priority and something that we're looking at in the future, whether it be with the use of connected vehicle technology, in-car notifications, things like that, but also some technology in regards to detecting those pedestrians and being aware that they're there. And I think that's part of the problem, especially in situations on freeways. Oftentimes, a car or vehicle will break down, will have an issue, and we may not be aware of it for 10, 15 minutes because they didn't call 911. So unless we saw it on camera, or, you know, our freeway courtesy patrol went by, and oftentimes that pedestrian that's changing a tire or walking up a ramp to go get help or whatever it might be is the one that ends up getting hit and, you know, potentially killed. So one of the things that we're doing in Michigan is starting to use cameras with automatic incident detection technology that can actually detect those pedestrians, and that will be helpful for crashes, a car-on-car crash as well. But those typically someone's calling into 911. We're going to find out about that relatively quick anyway. So I'm more interested in the benefit we're going to get from that in terms of those things that maybe somebody didn't actually call into 911 or our operations center isn't aware of. And so you're very arterial focused, and we are as well. We're expanding there, but certainly pedestrians and knowing about that they're there is important for us in Michigan.
Yeah, I want to continue on that theme, Jeff and panel here. Everybody kind of touched on some of the assets they had under their management. And again, I'm not in Austin anymore, but I'll tell you just a little quick, you know, we had over 1,200 traffic control devices, pretty much all fiber connected. And of course, we started playing with a lot more technologies. We became a city that was looking at progress. You know, the mayor and council had the foresight to think about what emerging technologies would look like in transportation. And they created something that we colloquially refer to as the Kitty Hawk resolution, right? They wanted to be the first to test great emerging technologies. And I think that kind of opened the door for us to look at that. And with the amount of pedestrian fatalities that we had in the city of Austin, you know, we were looking at actual use cases that would be helpful for us. So again, in the smart mobility side, we looked at you know, certain scenarios where you had to have a use case that tied into our comprehensive plan for the city. And so, for example, one of the use cases that we used was pedestrian and signalized crosswalk. And that kind of goes back to what David and Aaron are talking about. You know, we wanted to make sure there's a level of pedestrian safety or vulnerable user safety, really. And so beyond what we were doing in the TMC, kind of like what everybody was doing, and it was kind of interesting to hear Jennifer. I'm kind of going a little bit off here, but hearing Jennifer and all the technologies they're looking at, Waycare and Wejo and, you know, others, because that was stuff that Austin was, you know, we were in talks with a lot of those companies doing that sort of work as well. But we're also looking at intersection safety analytics. And when we say that, I don't mean it was just necessarily what was at the signalized intersection, but mid-block. Again, we had about 500 CCTV cameras, and sure, you can see down a corridor and see 3 or 4 intersections really well, but we wanted to be able to, and really see an incident, but also be able to really focus in on some of those mid-block crossings to understand what was happening, and then try to integrate all that. In our region, interestingly, we had, Texas DOT, and Jennifer, that was a great picture, 35 and 20, that's up in the Dallas region. Should have been Austin, but it's okay. We had TxDOT, we had City of Austin, and we had what we call CTRMA, Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority, and we are all kind of operating on different systems, right? City of Austin was using a KITS or Kimley Horn KITS advanced traffic management system. CTRMA was using something else. TxDOT was on Lone Star, and we were thinking about how to integrate all those systems because we were doing so much different technology work. But it was also integrating, again, the pedestrian side. We were looking at transit with our transit authority, on our managed lanes with CTRMA and TxDOT. So this really cross connection point between all these agencies trying to think about public safety. And so I think that is really kind of the future, and the emerging technology side is going to help us get there. And if you understand what your use cases are for your city, now we all have global issues in all our cities across the nation, but there are some that are unique to your environment. And that would be some of what I would preach is understand what your use cases are, and really kind of, when vendors come to you and talk to you about what they can do and bring it to your TMC, really understand what it is that you've focused on and what they can bring. Tied into the things that you have, comprehensive plans, maybe you have strategic mobility plans, but you got to make sure that those things are all kind of aligned. And I think that was kind of the interesting thing of working in Austin is we were able to kind of work together collaboratively to find what use cases really served us well. And again, I think the vulnerable user one was a big one that we all kind of identified, and we were able to deploy some of that technology. But that connected vehicle piece and that automated vehicle piece, which are kind of separate, and there was another pilot we were doing with Ford and Argo to see how automated vehicles responded as well. All that is information that you can bring back in your TMC and understand how you can help those vulnerable users a little bit more. So I think that's probably one of the things that we were looking at as well in Austin.
All right, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring it back to make sure you can hear me.
Yep.
I have to keep unmute myself. I'm gonna bring it back to freeway management. I know y'all were talking about pedestrians, but you asked what kind of technology we were excited about. Recently, we've been working on a way to notify trucks in vehicle of like stop traffic ahead, and in our rural areas, especially on our rural interstates, we don't have the overhead message boards to notify of stop traffic ahead, and that's when we have a lot of our worst crashes. And so we're working on a pilot right now to do some hard braking alerts to trucks in their cabs. And also we've been talking with our emergency management not system, division, whatever it's called.
Services.
Thank you. Simple stuff. That's what my brain's just too filled with all the complicated stuff. So the wireless emergency alerts where they can, put out a notification to your phone for Amber alerts. We've heard some states were using this technology to do alerts for stop traffic ahead, and especially in the rural areas. And so we started talking with our emergency management to see if they would potentially allow us to use that. So this is all targeted towards rural interstates. And I think what's exciting to me is this is always an area where it's kind of like difficult. We don't have all the technology geared towards rural areas like we have in the urban areas. And so this seems promising, like there's something that we could actually, and then of course, with the technology that's coming with connected technology, there's even more ways to get into the vehicles in rural areas, maybe not in the next couple of years because they'll have to have the apps that provide that information, but you can kind of see where it's heading in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Byron's question, but you're teeing it up really, really well. Would there be interest in having TMCs in rural areas, or at least motorist assistance or safety service patrol in rural areas?
So, I mean, I personally think there is always a return on investment when you have safety service patrol and, of course, TMCs. You know, even in rural areas, we're talking about a broadband project where we're putting fiber all over the rural areas, and somebody's got to take care of that fiber and manage it. So, my answer is yes. I think there is a need for a TMC, but there's always the question about how many do you need? Jeff, you know this well because we've had this strategic plan where it's either one or it's many. So is it 14 for North Carolina or is it one? And so that's always the question of the day is how many is the right amount of TMCs? At least for a state as the size of ours, it is a difficult question to answer.
And
Well, I
using
can-
use what Jorge was saying too, is tying it back to use cases. What are you trying to address with that rural TMC? All right, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, in Michigan, we have quite a bit of rural area, and I would say that it really comes down to being able to show that there's a benefit for the cost. So as I mentioned, Metro Detroit, we have 70% of all traffic in Michigan. That's where we're handling more crashes on a day-to-day basis. Our other operation centers, they're not even close to handling the same amount of traffic and situations that come up. So, I mean, in terms of the value, I don't know that we could demonstrate in some of these other areas having another operations center. Now, there's a difference though. If we're talking about ITS technology in those areas, meaning cameras, message signs, and the ability to deploy messages and manage traffic, we can do that from 100, 200 miles away. The only challenge is that it's different dispatch centers that are handling some of those other areas. And so it takes a little bit of time to build relationships. It's not like they can be co-located with them like we are here in Metro Detroit. So getting information about incidents and detecting those and knowing where they're at has to be more reliant on some of this newer technology that we're talking about here. So that's where things like Waycare or connected vehicle technology or Waze are going to be more helpful for rural areas because we don't have as much connection to the local agencies that are handling those incidents. So I know, my goal here in Metro Detroit is to be aware of over 75% of all of our crashes that happen on our freeways. At our statewide operations center, they're lucky if they get 25% right now. They just don't. Major crashes happen that they just don't have they're up in northern Michigan where there's not much traffic. So I think there's not one size that fits every situation. And I think it's dependent on what your strategic plan looks like and what your funding is available for some of these situations. Because you can manage traffic from far away. It's just, you have to have some of these other technologies in place to be able to do that.
And David, there was a follow-up question for you too, from Matt. Did you see that?
I did. Do you want to read it real quick or you want me to?
All right. If I had to guess, Cary is likely one of the most prominent areas of the state in regards to the percentages of vehicles with connected vehicle capability. Do you have any data or estimate of the penetration level of such vehicles in Cary? Just curious about the quote best case scenario percentage of vehicles that have that capability in North Carolina.
Yeah, because when you talk about pure traditional applications of connected vehicles, whether it's so you're talking DSRC or you're talking CV to X, you're talking about using that spectrum, right? That communication spectrum, and that is purely driven on auto manufacturers and what they're willing to put into their vehicles. Matt's references more to these always start in luxury level vehicles. Cary does have a high median income, so yes, we do have that. We have kids that go to high school that drive nicer cars than are in our parking lots. We don't have any data. We started to go that route. The vendor that we have chosen for our connected vehicle project is a cellular rather than CV2X. It's cellular based purely. So our penetration capability is 100% or close to it. Because the reliance is on that communication getting to people is a onboard unit that everybody has in their vehicle already, and that's this guy right here. So we felt like as DSRC, we, and Matt's probably aware, other people probably not, we went through a pretty comprehensive SPAT testing process that we worked with NCDOT on. Within 2 corridors in Cary. And we tested over half a dozen DSRC vendors and technology at the time. And we recognized the struggle that even after 15 years of development, the DSRC was still having. And CVTX at that time was really not a thing. And this switch that we've had recently, I'm not sure if people were in the previous session on the FCC ruling, but that switch moving from that traditional DSRC approach to a CVTX approach is really even kind of set it back again from where it is. So it's not going to be until another handful of years before we can really see CVTX really taken off. But in the meantime, we felt like there's an opportunity to use a form of connection that we already have right now, and that's through a cellular network, particularly with 5G coming out and being used, that we can provide a lot of benefit to people, even in a short period of time. We can justify the cost to utilize technology that is useful right now, that we can get it into people's hands so they can understand the benefit of it right now. We've got this chicken and the egg kind of thing, right? It says, do the manufacturers load up on these products and then we can justify putting them out on the street, or vice versa. If we get the capability into people's hands through a cell phone device on an app that they can connect into with their vehicle, they'll see the benefit of it and they'll demand those things out of both of those parties. So we think our hope is that we'll have a significantly high level of saturation when it comes to use of the application. The vendor we're using does allow for us to take their open source code and plug it into whatever we want to. So if we're developing our Town of Cary app that people can use, we can feed that information into that as well. So that's our hope there. So we didn't really dig any deeper into what sort of capabilities we have on a traditional connected vehicle application. Our vendor kind of pushed us in a different direction, so that's where we are.
Okay. Jeff has someone ask you to put up the CAV poll question. Go ahead and jump, since we're on that topic now with CV technology, and then ask the other panelists if they want to chime in on changes in field infrastructure, and how do you think CV technology is actually going to impact that? Are we still going to be deploying DMS? And what do you think the impact is on the way we're putting out infrastructure right now with CV technologies?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of follow up to what Dave was talking about there with CV technology. We're in the same boat here in Michigan. We have a lot of infrastructure in place, but we're not really able to utilize it like we need to yet. And there's really no way to know when that's going to actually happen. So I'm kind of at the crossroads of a few different things. I'm preparing our TMC and getting it ready for the future. We know that's coming. We know that it is where we're going to go eventually, autonomous vehicles and everything. But as Jennifer was talking about earlier in her startup, it looks like everything's frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We lost you for a little bit, but it's better now.
Aaron put all his bandwidth in the signal system.
Yeah, somebody want to take over talking for a little bit? See if I can get my internet going.
I'll go. Talking about, like, I do agree. I think that at some point we might not need as much of the current ITS technology as we use, but every day that we, remember, we keep installing new technology. So there's the list of devices might start to look different, because if you're going to do connected technology, there's a device that has to be installed and maintained and have some communication source for that. So it may not always be overhead message boards that provide that information, but there's going to be some kind of technology that has to be in the field, that has to be maintained and used. as far as when we won't need overhead message boards, don't know the answer to that. I do know that there are still a whole generation of people that are not necessarily using the latest and greatest technology that still need to have information provided to them. That's why we continue to provide a website that tells people, information. At the same time, we're trying to feed information to navigation companies, and they're not all on the same platform. So anyway, I think that we'll just be replacing different devices for the devices we have now. Also think that even with technology like connected technology, I think we'll always need some form of camera so we can verify what we're hearing and seeing, because we have a lot of technology like probe data that tells us there's backed up traffic, but we don't really know what we see from that map unless we have eyes on it. And so that is really important, especially during emergency operations, to have a visual, so like you're going to have to close the road, you're going to have to use provide different routing information. So Aaron, you back to finish your answer?
Yes, I'm back. As I was mentioning, I don't know when I cut out exactly, as I just noticed everybody was frozen, but no, so you mentioned Waycare earlier, and that's one of my ways to access third-party data that, frankly, from a state DOT standpoint, would take a lot of effort to try and get in some different situations. So I can partner with someone like Waycare. They can go out and make agreements with whoever they want to get data and get to that, and then build this artificial intelligence type algorithm that they're using, and provide me with information that, frankly, I think in some ways is going to challenge what I'm going to get, either from a connected vehicle infrastructure standpoint, or just they're going to be able to provide it as well. So there is this ongoing race of arms, so to speak, I think, between OEMs and third-party vendors trying to capture connected vehicle data versus what is going to be in our infrastructure. The only thing I think that really big benefit, and I know you're doing it with cell phones, eventually, is with all of our infrastructure, connected vehicle infrastructure out there, is being able to provide, things like roadway conditions in real time, right there on the spot in various situations. And, especially in Michigan with our changing weather, well, there's changing weather everywhere, but I mean, road conditions can change quite a bit within, a half mile. So that aspect is going to be there. Now, when we start talking about message signs and the value of that, yeah, I think that's a very challenging thing to figure out. And we were talking about this on Friday, and it's come up recently with some of our communities that are pushing back on us installing DMS right now because they feel it's outdated technology, that connected vehicles here, autonomous vehicles are here. And, I don't know who they're talking to specifically, or that's their opinion. Maybe they think that, but as you're saying, I think we're still a little ways away from where we can say message signs are obsolete. I just don't see it. I think we could, in my opinion, deploy DMS now that have, a 15, 20-year lifespan, and still be having this same discussion 15, 20 years from now about whether they're obsolete. But with the way this technology evolves almost daily, it seems, we could come back here next year and I could have a completely different opinion on that. But I think that if I look at everything that's out there right now and what we're doing and where things are going, I think there's still a lot of value in having them in place for the time being.
I mean, they're a tool, right? And a tool has a use. And if you use that tool for something it's not intended for, you're not gonna get the benefit out of it, and you can't hammer in a screw that well, right? So, we had DMS message boards in Cary as a small to mid-sized municipality, and we found they weren't really that useful. They have a role. I mean, you can see that some people do use them, and to your point of what kind of information can be pumped into people's cars, it has to be consumable while keeping your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. Thank you, Jorge. And you know, it has to be information that they're going to want at that moment. You see a lot of the benefit from people where you have, you know, bypass roads, and it's telling you which one is faster to get from this point to a single point over there, where people have to make that decision. You know, people don't know they need to make that decision sometimes, so they're not looking for it, or they don't have it programmed ready to go. And still, we want to keep their eyes on the road. So, you know, those things will have those uses. You know, I mean, we thought that amber alerts and silver alerts were going to be necessary for DMSs, but everybody gets them on their phones now. That thing screeches at you when you don't even expect it. But and vehicles are more connected now than ever through their own systems. You know, you got Audi Connect and OnStar and the various methods where vehicles are already connected. So you've got those ways to get into people's cars. But again, you've got to have, there's decisions that people have to make, and they don't know when they need to make it. So there's uses for these tools. We just have to use them right.
Yeah, that's, I think, like I said, you saw me, David, that's exactly the point, you know, this is not a plug for any particular manufacturer, but, you know, I had the benefit in Austin of having Siemens Mobility down the street, right? Their headquarters is down the street. So there's plenty of times that I went over there and hung out there, and they should have given me a second office the times I was over there. But, you know, those are the kind of discussions that we had, and, you know, we were bringing you know, some of the traffic engineers from, you know, if anybody knows John Ty out in Anaheim, and he's kind of like a test bed of a lot of stuff. And so, you know, we'd come in and come together and talk about these issues. And I think you're right on, David. You know, Austin had 15 DMSs. I jokingly said to this group the other day, we're lucky if like 13 out of 15 were operational at any given time. And then typically we want to give useful traffic operational messages. Every once in a while, you feel a little bit political pressure to do something different, but I think they still have their place. You know, I have been in the connected vehicle realm for a while, and I totally tout that technology. But at the same time, I think, I think Jeff will present a question later, but I think we're still visual learners in a lot of ways. And I think we really look for those cues. And that distraction, as David pointed to, in the vehicles was a question that always came up when we spoke to Siemens about the technology, you know, the partnerships they had with their human machine interfaces, you know, which is just your infotainment system, right? Your Sirius XM on the dash. But it was kind of asking, well, yeah, we don't want people taking their eyes off the road. So we send these mixed messages about distracted driving and don't look at your phone, but now you're looking at your infotainment system to see what's happening ahead. I mean, I think in a sense, the DMS is a quick alert that you see visually, you perceive quickly, and you look away and you understand. But when you take a second to look down at your dash, that could be a different sort of scenario, right? You kind of look down, now you've lost a little bit of control. And then, so I think there is, we're still trying to understand how people can use it, how they can perceive the messages. But I think there still will be used for DMS, especially I think on a freeway state system. I mean, those are quick messages. They're obviously very large. You see the information and you know what to do with it. When you're on an arterial system, our hope is that you're at least going, you know, legally the speed limit. I know that some people don't do that, but if you're legally going the speed limit and you're paying attention and doing what you're supposed to do from you know, a driving perspective, then yeah, seeing those messages up on a DMS probably gives you the information you need versus looking at your phone, looking at your infotainment system. But I think as we learn to understand how these systems can work better, you know, yeah, like Aaron said, that may change. We may have a different perspective, you know, a year from now, 5 years from now. But I think right now it's still important to kind of see where we are. And also, I don't know that we have enough research to say DMS is, you know, more efficient than infotainment, you know, and I think those are kind of those will be studies we'll see come out later, you know, and it might change perception reaction time and all that kind of information that we know as engineers and traffic engineers. But I think all that will bear out later as there's more of this technology, and we'll understand how those systems work better for us and really for the human brain. I like to bring the whole kind of you know, social aspect to everything I do in technology. You know, I don't get right into the technology side of it. I like to see the social aspect. So I do a lot of questioning on these tech companies about those social aspects. And I think, again, these will be important questions that may be answered through some research later down the road.
Do you have anything
Okay.
to add, Jennifer? I just had one more thing to say. I just kept follow up that. So a lot of it is timing of everything. So we know that on our phones, I can program my location or where I'm going on Google or Waze or whatever. And if there's some crowdsourcing data that suggests that there's a crash or construction or something that is impacting my route, it will reroute me automatically. Now, being the stubborn person I am, I have failed myself and said that there's no way that route that it's suggesting is faster. Then I get down and I see a DMS that says crash ahead, and I've already missed that point that I could have gotten off. So some of it I think has to do with the confidence in what we're actually seeing show up on our screen. But then the second part is my 2016 Ford Fusion. I don't live in Cary, so I don't have the luxury vehicles, but doesn't have that capability to be in-car information. So if it's on my route to work, I'm not using Google or Waze. I'm just driving to work. And so my reliance on DMS to alert me, or the radio, or what, actually usually it's not the radio because I'm streaming Apple Music or something like that, or a podcast. So my only connection to the outside world at that point is those message signs right now. When I buy my next vehicle, that might change, but I think as we're talking about generationally, there could be a while where those signs still provide that visual, like you were saying, Jorge, visual aspect to it. So it's interesting. I don't know where it's going to go or how quickly it's going to change, but
I will add, first, let me say I do live in Cary, but I'm like low income Cary. And because of Cary's installation of DMSs, we learned that maybe those on arterials are not the best application of overhead message boards. And so as from a state perspective, we do not typically, or if ever, install on arterials. So I do think there may be an application more appropriate for a control of access facility. And for those that have worked with me long enough know that, to me, the most important aspect of the overhead message boards is when you can notify somebody that they're stopped traffic ahead. So the very first thing that an operator does when there is a crash is put a message up as a warning. Yes, we use the overhead message boards to route people, that's the other part of it, but the most important one is the safety part, where we can actually provide that notification as quick as possible. So and just like y'all all said, is sometimes that's not coming in through your other, especially if you're on a podcast or whatever, you don't necessarily get that. You will see that on the road, though you will want to look at the sign and see what the message is. So there are challenges, of course, that come with these message boards because everybody else doesn't necessarily follow the engineering practices that we've all learned about, NBTCD and why we use them and what messages are supposed to go on them. And with the pandemic, we've had to stretch some of our typical uses of them. And of course, we get a request every week for something else to be posted on there. So there are some challenges with trying to manage the use of those, preserve them for, and this is a discussion that has been going on for as long as we've had overhead message boards, how much is too much to use them, and when can you overuse them, but when do you get the value return on investment for using them? So I didn't mean to get down on that rabbit trail, but wanted to add the fact that I live in Cary to the comments.
I don't live in Cary. I live just outside of Cary, which is a great place to be. But I don't live in Cary, but I do have a vehicle that keeps me, is one of those ones keeps you in the lane if you go out, and it'll let you know if you need to stop or whatever. So what I was going to say is a lot of this needs to be audible, but it's got to be simple and effective audible. Because I mean, even for your 2016, Aaron, I'm sure you're driving down the road, it'll make a noise for some reason, and your reaction is, what was that? What does that mean? Not a check engine light, right? Hopefully it's just gas. So, but you do take that moment where you have to think, what in the world is going on? Because I don't know what ding, ding, ding means. Is that different from ding, ding, or what? I mean, I don't know. There has to be an effective auditory symbol for all of us in order to understand without having to think too much about what it is. Because when you're thinking about that, you're not thinking about what's going on in front of you or behind you. But the great thing about those boards, and I think it's, Jennifer mentioned it and we just kind of passed by it, but the colored DMS boards, if you're gonna use them, why not, right? I mean, there's a reason the reason MUTCD exists is a lot of it is because the colors of the signs are all uniform, and that's a reason. Like those are effective to signify a color that means something, some sort of action or some sort of attention you have to give. And when you've got an attention grabber like a DMS board that needs to get you that information, being able to use color to associate the importance of that message, I think is huge. That's why none of our stop signs aren't in black and yellow or whatever orange, whatever color our DMS boards all are, gold or whatever it is. It's red and white, and we immediately know what that means. And so if you have a critical message and you can put it up in color on that board, your brain, before you even read the thing, knows what it's asking you to do. So I think that's hugely important, that if you're going to go down that road, use the right tool, right? And that makes the tool even better for the job. So I think if you stick to simple auditory messages and you use that, I think we had a question previously about, why don't we have heads-up displays in vehicles anymore? I'm not sure. I think they do exist, and why not have them more often? I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's space and cost, I would imagine.
I'm going to shift us back to the TMC, out of the vehicle, away from the DMS, get us back to the TMC. Kind of look at the question around how do you think the physical look and the approach to TMCs are going to change in the future? Are we still going to be building large video walls 10 years from now? Are we going to have more operators, less operators? What do you think the actual floor of a TMC, how do you think that's going to change going into the future?
So I'll jump in real quick. I think it goes back to what I said as far as, I think just humans in general are very visual, and I think that, yeah, we can look at all the technology that's emerging, and we're making things smaller. And, I'm at the point in my age where if I don't have my contact lenses in and I've got one of these in front of me, I've got to pull my glasses up and have it about this close. All right. So, it's great to have the compactness of the technology that we have now. In fact, when I was in Austin, the great thing working with emerging technologists was they don't think like our traditional traffic engineering industry. And I said, I want to see a signal controller this big. I don't want a cabinet on the corner anymore. I want something that can control my signals that's this large. And to them, they're just like, yeah, cool, I can do that. Now, I'm sure that'll scare the Siemens and the Econolites and the McCains of the world. But you know what? Great, do it. I want somebody to really think about it. But that all being said, as we get more compact, that's great. We're able to, could we pull up, 3 little screens on this thing and look at what's going on? Sure. But again, I think we're very visual. And when we would have an incident in Austin, we're looking at I-35 and something happened on TxDOT and now it's spilling onto our arterial roadways. I mean, you could just see that collective turn of the head, the signal engineers that were in the room, the operators that were in the room, even me as the division manager in the room, kind of coming out of my office and popping out to see what was going on and understanding the incident. And so then we were able, on this huge video display, we're all seeing the same thing. We're able to communicate with TxDOT or, Texas DPS or Austin PD and those kind of things. I think it's our visual cortex. It's the way our brain processes information. We like that big kind of spectacle. It's why Times Square looks the way it looks. It's why Tokyo looks the way it looks, because we ingest that sort of information. And I don't think that, I think the footprint, it could change a little bit, but I think there's still going to be a reliance on people to be in a traditional TMC. And again, Jennifer talked about it too, the camera aspect, being able to see what's going on with the cameras that you don't get all the time. So all that kind of visual stimulation is we as humans kind of consume. And I think that there won't necessarily be a lot of change. I think more of the change will be the technology, the data sets they're integrated into the system. But as far as what it looks like, yeah, it may change a little bit in terms of space, but I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, and Aaron talked about generations, and maybe, as generations, these younger generations, maybe they're okay with looking at 10 different cameras on one of these. But if not, I think we'll continue to kind of see that. I don't know, at what point that may change, but that's just kind of my perspective. I think that's how I think of things.
I
Yeah,
can jump in.
go ahead, Jennifer.
ahead, Aaron.
I'll go. Okay.
Okay.
So
We're so nice.
yeah, so the COVID pandemic has really changed perspective on a lot of things in this world. And I think our operations center has been working remotely and still is working remotely since mid-March of last year. So there's a video wall that's there, and we still control it, and we still put crashes that have happened on there because Michigan State Police Dispatch is there. So I think it really depends, if twofold. A video wall does help for those teamwork situations when there is a major incident going on, or in our case, a major winter storm, maybe in North Carolina, a hurricane. There are situations. Now, on normal everyday situations, it doesn't certainly have nearly as much value as it does when those big things happen. So that's in terms of the video wall. When we're working remotely, we still have the capability to build our own video wall right in front of us with our monitor screen. But it's not, you're not able to collaborate as easily with it that way. And in some of these emergency situations, especially when we're tracking a wrong way driver, it's nice to be able to pull up those next 4 or 5 cameras onto the video wall and be able to work with Michigan State Police and help the troopers track that person down. So I think, yes, can we operate without a large video wall? Certainly. But I think as we were talking earlier about, right sizing a TMC for the situation, I think that really just depends on how much traffic you have, how many times you're going to be using it for a major incident. So I don't think that really changes over time. And the only time that's going to change is when they take the human factor out of driving. When there's no longer the human factor in terms of driving, I think, and we can have data to show that our crash rate is so low that it's really there aren't major incidents happening anymore, then maybe we can have that discussion. But I don't think we're at any point ready to start having that discussion about transitioning to that type of space. So that's I have another part about TMCs in the future in terms of that. But if you want to have something to add about video walls, Jennifer, first.
Yeah, I'll say I agree with a lot of what you said about video walls. In the fact that the video walls not always for an operator, even though the operators use them. A lot of it's for situational awareness for all the other people that come into the TMC and want to know what's going on. Because sitting in our control room, right behind us is the Highway Patrol, Emergency Management. This is our facilities where the governor comes and does his press releases or press conferences. And of course, everybody, the media is in there. Everybody's in there. They want to see what's going on. And so those monitor walls kind of give you that situational awareness. But I also mentioned that, with an operator station, even though they have, 4 or 5 now monitors, they're looking at CAD feeds from the Highway Patrol. They're looking at speed data. They're putting information into our system. They're, proactively detecting incidents. And so, back to your point, if we're still having incidents, they're still going to have to do all those things, and they got to look at the cameras. And so the cameras, being able to they can create their video wall in front of them as well, but, be able to throw some up on the main wall and concentrate on their incidents, especially in a statewide center where we could be dealing with multiple incidents across the state at the same time. But yes, especially during an emergency when everybody wants to see what's going on. They want to see for a hurricane, they want to see if NC 12 has been breached, and they want to see what's going on, Cape Fear River. And all those things I don't see until the crashes start to change and there's not as many crashes where any of that would go away anytime soon. We did also want to mention, we did become pretty proficient at a virtual TMC, but even still, an operator that's working virtually only has maybe, 2 monitors as versus how many they might have in a TMC, plus a handheld radio, whereas in the TMC, they're connected directly to the fiber connection to the core of where all our Viper radios, which is our 800 megahertz radio system, and you don't get all that virtually. So I think there's still a place for people to be in the TMC. There's all of our technology is hooked up there. Still a place for the message, not the message line. See, I'm in the last answer, but the monitor wall is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, so I was going to mention, and you actually were talking about some of the stuff that operators have to do now. That's really where I have taken this in Michigan, or at least at SEMTAC, is first of all, we don't refer to them as operators anymore, because we refer to them as traffic operations specialists. And here's why. No longer do they just have to do 1 or 2 functions, whether it be radio someone or pick up a phone or read a CAD entry and say, oh, there's a crash here, and put something on a message board. They're having to actually read traffic data. They're in real time and help make decisions. So they're really, in my opinion, they're actually specialized, and we're actually developing different levels of specialization that they can go get training on, whether it be on some of our signal systems, so that they're no longer just operating a system. They're specialists. They have a lot of value because they're not necessarily, having to do things maybe at the level David has to do in terms of signal timings, but they have to be able to identify those things and help the engineers and those that are in charge of making those decisions have that kind of information. And so as we move into the future, there's just more and more data coming at us. We have so much data coming into our operations center right now, and it's been able to manage and utilize that to help move traffic better and make better decisions about rerouting traffic, network decisions with signals, kind of looking at the whole system. And so that's kind of the culture change that we're doing here for the future, to help kind of look at things in a different lens, so to speak.
Yeah, I will add that we also have traffic management specialists that are doing, it's kind of like the hybrid between an operator and an engineer. And, we've got ones that are working with us directly on projects who are collecting all the data and providing information. And then we have the ones that are sitting in the, seats that are doing the detection. And so, yeah, we have similar where we have lots of different levels, but maybe not the engineer level, but as close to it as we're going to get without a degree in engineering.
And this is a topic that comes up a lot for us. And again, it's the tool and how you use it, right? We have that conversation a lot about, we've got a video wall in ours. It's not to the scale that NCDOT does or Michigan does. But, 98% of its life, it carries the same feeds on each monitor, and it's doing its thing. Fortunately in CARE, we don't have cars that run into each other anymore, right? But when it's not being used for that, a lot of it is focused around the public for us. We get we're in town hall. We've got a giant glass wall outside of our TMC. Our video wall is positioned so it shines straight out the glass wall, right? So it's for the public. The public is able to come there and see what they spent their tax money on and what kind of benefit they're getting out of it. So there is that visual aspect of being able to showcase what capabilities are for us. It outside of those times, I mean, we do a lot of tours for a lot of folks, and they appreciate being able to have demonstrations put up there and to have multiple things up and going. We do have snow command and other incidents that do occur. And you know, probably the second most useful function we get out of it is when we have other project managers come into our traffic management center and say, hey, I need to look at my job site. You know, what's going on? I need to be able to see that. And you know, why is this happening? We can pull up what the loops are doing all right. We can pull up video. We can zoom and pan around and check out what's going on their site, make sure traffic control is set up properly. And so they get a lot of use out of that. So if it's not doing its core function, it's a lot of times we get other project managers coming there and being able to use it, and that kind of thing attracts them. If they were to sit there and have to stare over somebody's shoulder at their monitor to see what's going on, we probably wouldn't get them in there as much, and they wouldn't get the benefit out of it. It's sort of a necessary evil kind of thing. It's I think it does have a tool. It's a tool that does have a use. It may not be as useful as it used to be, but I think it needs to be there. So if you have to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether you're going to get one and whether it's going to be there in the future, I'm pretty sure you got to make that thumbs up decision.
Yeah, and I'll let you keep it going, Jeff, but I just want to throw one more thing. It's interesting to have this panel because you got, like you said, a statewide perspective and you have more of a local municipality. And I think another unique aspect is what your city looks like in terms of, you know, what's going on there day to day. You know, and when I think about it, you know, Austin was a city with a lot of special events. And I said, Nashville, we're planning, you know, what the future of a TMC would look like here. Again, you know, Lower Broadway down here, very touristy, a lot of things going on. Obviously the confluence of many different freeway systems here. So I think that there is value in it. But again, looking back at Austin, you know, when you think about it, you've got the South by Southwest Festival, you know, that occurs every year. You've got Austin City Limits twice, you know, on 2 weekends. You've got Formula One, you've got UT. And when I say UT, I have to always correct myself living in Tennessee, because I always think back to UT Austin, not University of Tennessee, but, you know, UT Austin and their football games. And then just the myriad of other events that take place throughout the year in Austin. I mean, obviously it's a tourist destination as well. A lot of conferences, a lot of stuff going on. And then with the freeway systems being as congested as they are in Austin, I think the use of the TMC in that respect does serve us well. And kind of what David and Jennifer and all, you know, and Aaron had said, yes, did we have certain corridors that it's, you know, that the cameras were, you know, that they were spotted on most of the time? Yes, I would say that, you know, 90-some% of the time you're looking at the same corridors because, you know, they get congested. And what are we looking at? And then maybe you start to ignore them. But there were enough events throughout the year that, you know, we had stuff trained on all sorts of areas of town, especially, like I said, when these bigger events like ACL, Austin City Limits, and South Y were in town. You know, all our cameras were trained on those areas. And then along the periphery where we knew we would, you know, because the engineers had created an exit strategy, right? They, you know, all the routing plans, you are constantly heightened by that sort of response, and having that visual in a TMC coordinated with your, you know, your roving control center near the event really helps. And again, could we do it on some smaller laptops? I suppose, and I haven't asked what they're doing in Austin these days. I would imagine they're probably remote as well these days. But again, I just think that they're, like what David said, it's a tool. I think it's a thumbs up in some cities because, again, just the amount of things that are happening. You know, you could look at Los Angeles or Anaheim with Disneyland and the Angels and everything else. So I think, again, contextually, you got to look at what is going on in your environment. I think from a local perspective, it may be a little bit different than a statewide perspective.
So that's some great conversation on the physical TMC, and I want to look at now the operators, or the next generation operators, the traffic management specialists, traffic operations specialists. How do you see their role changing in the future TMC, and what technologies do you think are really going to drive the change in their day-to-day role or their day-to-day responsibilities?
I'll start again. I mean, I like what Aaron said about the, you know, naming the different types of people that are situated in these TMCs, because again, I saw the same thing in Austin, right? We saw people that, you know, as we integrated INRIX data and as we integrated, you know, Waycare information and Waze Connected Citizen, our operators were transitioning from just, call the incident in to, monitoring the detection that was down, looking at kits, looking at the visual display of panel, and understanding how to use all the different data sets that were coming in. So I think that there's a, a more of a transition. I mean, I tell people this, I think in transportation, and I'm sure if there's people that are older than me, they'd say the same thing. We didn't see a lot really happening quickly in our field. And then I would say maybe a little less than a decade ago, we really took off. All this emerging technology changed the way that we look at transportation in our business. And so I think that those people have come along too, because of the way we look at, the cellular phone, or the way our we talk about 5G, and we talk about computer systems and all this. They've really come, they've really learned with us. And so the operators have changed into, being able to monitor systems and make changes on the fly. Just like maybe I had relied on in the past, signal engineers going out to the cabinet and, using the radio and calling downstream to another signal and saying what's happening there. These people are able to make those kind of decisions on the fly. They, just amazing. Just in a code system, knowing what signal that is, where it is by, hey, 347, oh, that's the intersection of this and that, and then they're making changes quickly. So I think there's a real change coming, and I think Aaron and Jennifer both pointed to that. The systems and how they're being used, and the people that are, how we're classifying this, the type of people that are coming in, and their skill sets. I think that there's a lot of specialization in different areas. I think the cross skill of that is going to make these people really invaluable in the long run. But I'm excited about it. I think it's great, and I'll open it up to the rest of you.
We have less of a hierarchical structural flow to the assignments within our TMC. We recognize that, sort of to Jorge's point, is that there is a change in the knowledge level and the skill base within everybody involved with these programs. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, we had a session at one of these conferences about education for ITS and how people really started talking about how people got into the field of ITS. And it was very interesting to see the roundabout path that people took to get to where they are. And, it opens up educational opportunities for everybody. What that means is it's going to take a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of different disciplines in order to make the TMC successful and operational. There's network issues, there's big data, there is programming, there's a lot of skill sets that need to be developed. I mean, our guys that are out in the field that do preventative maintenance stuff, they're programming switches now. We got what we call our programmers, or our operators are, they're working within our virtual servers to pull data out to Azure so it can be consumed by other people within our organization. So I mean, it's going to take a lot more people that come in that may not spend all of their time in the TMC. And the TMC staff may spend some time outside of the TMC working with those groups as well, sharing data with, how much can our information on traffic flow help out our utility engineers, or our stormwater engineers, or our Parks and Rec group when it comes to programming when the next golf tournament is going to be. So we see that as being people in more of a parallel structure to where they have circles that overlap other circles, and they're moving in and out of projects and in and out of groups. So the skill sets have to grow, which means maybe we can bring in people that are spending a little bit of time working with us to help our department and help the traffic management center.
Yeah, so I mean, the nuts and bolts of a traffic operations specialist, roles in incident management is still going to be there. Their ability to, help with traveler information and do those things that a TMC is more traditionally involved in. I think that's still going to be the base level. I think that's going to happen. But as you mentioned, and you called it big data, there's going to be a time when they're going to have to understand, is this good data or bad data? Is there something wrong with this data, or is this what is really going on out there? And that a lot of those decisions need to be done in real time. And a lot of those are going to be connected to other systems that are going to be providing potentially data to in-vehicle systems, whatever it might be. And the accuracy of that is going to, it's just like our accuracy of our messages that we put out on our message boards right now. We lose the public's confidence if we're putting out bad data. So, you know, the data that we're putting up on message signs at some point in the future is going to be fed into vehicles, right? And so that needs to be accurate. That needs to make sure it's good. And I think that takes a little more specialty than it does right now in terms of a traditional operations center. The second part, and this is happening here, when we're doing more active traffic management in Metro Detroit than we ever before. So we have numerous systems that are either in place or going into place in the next 5 years, whether it be flex lanes, variable speed systems. We're going to have our first HOV lane, things like that. Some of these, and down in North Carolina might laugh at me about, but in Michigan, they're finally getting around to putting some of these systems in. And just on the short-term future, those take more specialty to operate and manage correctly than it does the normal freeway system. And so there's opportunity for all kinds of different levels of specialty, and I'm very excited about it. The other thing that we've done at SEMTAC is we actually have what we refer to as a TISMO engineer that's on staff to kind of oversee all these systems and make sure they're working correctly. Because not only are we doing freeway operations, we're now doing arterial operations. And so now we start bringing in the signal system and being able to look at things more of on a network basis, not just freeways or arterials, but more looking at it in a combined effort. And again, when something happens, you know, I know you were mentioning special events. We have all 4 of our professional sports teams located right behind me in Metro Detroit. We don't even call them special events anymore because they're not special. They happen every day of the week almost. And so there's something going on that it's different or unique more times than there's not. And so for my traffic operations specialist to be able to think outside the box and help solve new situations that come up requires a little bit more level of training than in the past.
Jennifer, do you have anything on? Okay. If we can unmute you.
Yeah, still trying to figure out how to do this. So if you saw our presentation or the presentation this morning at 10, it was all about integrated corridor management. And we talked about towing contracts. We talked about signal system timing. We talked about alternate detour routes. We talked about travel information. And what may be obvious to all of you, but may not be, but all of that responsibility in the end falls on the operators at TMC to execute. So it's very true what you said, Aaron, is they're expected to do a lot more than they've ever done before because they're now activating signal timing plans. They're collecting performance measures. They're having to track everything. And so we've been growing our staffing for TMCs for the last few years because we've gotten really involved in work zones and how we manage work zones. So we've got specialists and we've got within our group, we've got, travel information specialty. We've got an ITS operations specialty. We've got the TMCs and what was the other one I'm missing? Planning. And all of that information has to have, and incident management, that was the other one. All of that has to have some support. And there's always got to be a connection to the control room. That's the foundation. That's the fundamental of what we're doing in all of those areas. So part of why we have these additional people to help support is to be able to, one, represent what's going on in the control room. How does that actually get executed? And then provide the support, the data, the information to provide to the engineers who are managing those programs. And so for sure, the role of the operator, and I use the operator in a general term, the role of the operator is much, much broader. And that's all the way from the person sitting on the control room floor, and we call them hall people, the operators that have been taken off the control room, put on the hall, and are doing the jobs that are supporting all the engineers and all the performance measures, and also training all the operators to do each one of the executions that we're talking about, plus keeping our standards to going, making sure that everybody in the state is operating the same. And, we can answer questions, specific questions about how we should be operating in this particular situation. So we've been growing our staff with operators that have grown up. The other thing I was going to mention too, just thought about this, is we take about 12 weeks to train an operator to be able to sit on the floor and do the job. But the truth is, it takes months and months for them to really be skilled enough, knowledgeable enough to be able to do that job by themselves. Because not only do we have all this technology, we also have a very complex organization where we expect them to know all the people they have to work with, organizational awareness of who they're supposed to call and when they're supposed to call. And on top of all of that, in North Carolina, we still don't have any kind of tech tool like an ATMS that integrates all the tools together that they need to use to do their job. So we just keep piling on the complexity onto their plates and asking them to do a little bit more and a little bit more, be a little bit, sharper. And so we've had to create those different levels within the operator levels to be able to accomplish all of that. And we've even had some that were engineering students that ended up moving on to other jobs within the department that because they got that experience with our operations group.
Yeah, I like the idea of
Hi, David.
real quick, Jeff. Yeah, thanks. To kind of Aaron's point about the data, it's ATS-PM is a tool. I hate using that same term. It's data that we can use, but you have to be able to, like you said, you have to be able to consume it properly, right? And it's but it can be immensely helpful, and it can allow those folks who are operators to become something more than operators, and they can, as automated traffic signal performance measures are, you still have to do something about it, and you still have to be able to interpret it and understand it. So, yeah, I mean, and trying to do all that, at a municipal level, we have 2 people that do all of our operations stuff. 3 if you round up 3 other people that spend maybe a third of their time in operations. So it's a crunch. So, working smarter. I don't really like using that term too much, but it's trying to work smarter in order to get more out of those people we have. So we really don't have for us, we really don't have a choice on whether people remain operators or specialists. They're almost managing a program at their level.
All right. And now our kind of closeout question, kind of summary for you at the end, and we'll wrap up. If anyone has questions, again, just post them in the chat while we're talking through this. But knowing this evolution is going to occur over years or over decades into whatever this next generation TMC looks like, are you already beginning to make some shifts in your resources? Are you shifting funding? Are you shifting staffing? Are you shifting focus on infrastructure? What are some changes that you may already be looking to implement now or in the next year to 2 to kind of prepare for this TMC of the future?
I can touch on that a little bit because we have an extensive connected vehicle aspect of our entire program. In fact, our call for projects and our template, when we start discussing it, a good portion of that is set aside. There's a big set aside for supporting connected vehicle infrastructure, a platform for it, our Terraform Manager program that we have. And so just in terms of funding, yeah, there's been a big shift. that is supporting that technology aspect of it. The other part that, you know, just in terms of my TMC itself, I think we've kind of been talking about a little bit, but the biggest thing I've been doing is bringing in, aligning ourselves with data, or the ability to look at data in more of a real-time fashion, whether that be by bringing in data scientists that can interpret that data for me and help make decisions. So, I mean, we look at corridor performance a lot more actively than we ever have before, and look at trends and look at how traffic patterns change a lot more frequently than we did in the past. And that's important because that helps us determine changes in either reoccurring congestion. It actually helps us support a lot of decisions, but so as we were talking about earlier, there's more data coming in, and then determining where we're going to spend money on what types of data is also another aspect that's out there. So, there's so many companies that come to you and say, oh, we have the latest and greatest, and we can make your TMC get, this much better and be able to know about these things and do this. And it's trying to weed through what's good and what's not good, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's hard to do because it's very, some of it's not really, there's not many places you can go. I know Jennifer showed Waycare in Nevada. It's well established out there, and that's their main case study for their predictive modeling and things like that. So I mean, in my aspect, it's been a shift in funding. That's kind of the biggest thing, and that's really what I look at.
Jeff, I think I have a unique perspective, and I oversaw a TMC, but here in Nashville, we don't, for a city as big as we are, right? For the entire metro, we're talking 2 million. Just talking about the city county, we're talking about 700,000. So you take all that that number, and we have no TMC, we have no management. And as I came here, I started talking to Tennessee DOT and thinking about more at the regional level. We've got smaller cities, satellite cities, and thinking about how we integrate a TMC that has the most use for all of us, right? So, and then integrating elements that some have done or some kind of piecemeal in. It's kind of getting to the table and saying, let's look at a regional model that takes the state, the local municipality, our departments of public safety and our transit authority, and roll them all into one. And then think about that from, like Aaron said, from a funding perspective, because we think, how much more federal and state funding do you get when you can roll all these functions up into one regional facility that really helps the entire region. And then beyond that, it is trying to understand what technologies do we bring in. To Aaron's point, again, what I loved about working in Smart Mobility in Austin was, we were the clearinghouse. As I said at the beginning, you didn't get to come in and just sell us your wares. You had to prove how it would help us. And, we had kind of this web portal, expression of interest form that you had to do your homework, and you had to be prepared to show us what you wanted to do. And then we would go through, this whole kind of committee review and everything else. So I think like using, templates, something like that, really kind of informed what it is that your state or city is necessarily wanting to use and know about, understanding what your unique challenges are, understanding what the global challenges are, and then building it from there is going to be a little bit easier, I think. And then, instead of kind of trying to piecemeal it. And for a guy that, did work in a connected vehicle and really loved it, one of the things that, one of the consultants that was helping us with this TMC build out, or part of our transportation plan that was just adopted recently, was kind of thinking about the connected vehicle aspect and funding associated with it. And I kind of went, wait, time out. I don't want to commit to anything. And, it was specified exactly like, this is for DSRC or whatever. Hey, I've been in this game enough to know that this isn't, the future necessarily. So first of all, I want to keep it agnostic. And secondly, I want to build out a system that works, to get us the fundamental pieces, right? If we're going to do fiber connectivity, if we're going to do a video wall. Those are the pieces I need first to really have use of the system. And the emerging technology pieces will come in later. And the good thing is having an understanding of how to use those. But I think that's a really kind of unique perspective in a city that's as large as this is and building something kind of brand new. Now, yes, we're going to do it at a local level and have a standalone for the time being, but really the discussion needs to be around how do we regionalize it and how do we get some of those roadblocks out of the way. And I think everybody here can probably empathize with this. If you have your IT network, departments and everything, it's all a question of, legally and IT wise, how can we all communicate and how can we set up systems and integrate, and understanding how to get past those barriers so that we can come together. I think typically traffic engineers at state and local levels, at least in my experience, have always worked well together, looking out for the best interest of their community. It's when it gets to that political level that things change a little bit. But we're always looking for the best ways to integrate ourselves and do the best for our community. If we can remove some of those barriers and make ourselves set up for something more successful and understand what parameters we want to bring in, I think that's really what we're looking for in the future.
I'm trying to take in the size of the network you're working with, Jorge, and you don't have a TMC. So I think in the triangle we have 5. So maybe we can let you borrow one or something. But yeah, I think sort of to what's been said so far, most of our funding has not necessarily been on people, it's been on data. It's been on focusing on those programs that we can use to take what we were doing and do them more efficiently. Again, we have ATSBM, we're working on connected vehicle, we're looking at other ways to collect data, whether that's through fisheye cameras or using our existing video detection for gaining traffic counts. It's just trying to be as efficient as we can and still provide as best service as we can, and while also expanding it, because we know there's a lot of opportunity out there. So it's fighting for all those other resource needs that we have and trying to justify it. So far, we've gotten support for the programs that we want to create and to expand, and that's been great. I would like to have some more people, but I know that's difficult nowadays. But I think for us, a lot of it is efficiency. It's just trying to take the staff we have now and train them and get them to the position where they can utilize the data that we've got and create and tweak out just as much green time as we can for folks, or keep people from running into each other as often as we can.
So I can't say that we are taking any funding and moving it anywhere else. I can say that our priorities may have shifted as far as what we spend time on, but we apply for every single grant initiative that's out there, and most of the ones like Waycare, I mentioned the tethered drones. I also didn't mention, but along with that one is the connected technology that we're going to also put on our IMAP trucks. That was a grant initiative by Federal Highways. We're hoping to submit another one that gets accepted. ATSPM was another grant. So anything new that we want to try, we're looking for new money, whether it's CMAQ or congestion grant. We'll apply for everything and anything. What I will say though is, and in preparation for all of this, one of the things we need to do in our state, at our statewide, not our state, but just because NCDOT is, we need to make sure that we're handling the basics well. And when I say the basics, I'm talking about just asset management of our devices. And so this is the year of, or the next couple of years of, our focus on ITS operations, and whether that's fiber management, whether it's asset management, what are the tools that we're using, how do we do it? We've spent many years on standardizing our TMC operations, getting those good. Then we've worked on our incident management program, getting our standard training set up with our IMAP, and we're still working on those same things, but what we did along the way is we kind of put ITS operations to the side. Granted, we've done a lot of good things like get on the same network of all our TMCs on the same network, but in order to be prepared for all these new technologies and all this data, we really have to make sure that we've got the resources, the strategic plan for how we manage them, our ITS devices and our network. So that's where we're going to be putting our focus, starting with some strategic planning and maybe just listing out all the things that we need to do, because we've got a lot of action items. Some projects like the broadband projects kind of pushing us forward into that direction or dragging us forward. I don't know which one you call it, whether we want to or not. So yeah, that's where we've got to spend our time so that we can be prepared when all these new things are being thrown at us, and figuring out where we put them in and replace them and how we manage them.
We have a follow-up question from Matthew Carlisle. How much do the regional TMCs work with municipal TMCs? For example, the SDOC with Cary and Raleigh, and Greensboro, Winston-Salem with the Triad Regional TMC. David and Jennifer, you can't laugh. You have to answer the question.
I don't wanna. Well, it's a changing relationship, right? It's I think initially with kind of a earlier set of technology, there's a lot of serial stuff. There was some communication there. We have a connection. Used to share video, but when a change over to digital for us and sort of waiting for the local state TOC office to make that technology change, we sort of kind of broke those relationships a little bit. And but I think I think the state TOC now is on that platform, and it's I was talking with some folks the other day about needing to get back together again and sort of bring that create that connection once more. So there's great opportunity there for us to improve the coordination and communication we have with one another. I can put it that way, I guess.
I'll add that Cary used to own some DMSs on the freeway section, and we used to have to coordinate with them a lot because we used them more than they did. And so we were constantly having to call and ask them to put messages up because we couldn't, I guess, control them at the time. So I think we've taken those back from Cary, and maybe on a day-to-day basis, there's not as much we do. We probably will have some, when we have incidents, we may work with them about managing traffic. And I think we've had some projects where we've worked with Cary on signal system timing in the past. Actually, Fortify's the one that comes to mind. Daily basis, I don't know how often the operators actually are calling Cary, because they're kind of focused on a totally different network, even though we're trying to be more all the roadway network. But when you got so many miles, you kind of bring it up to the highest level, and the interstates are really what we're focused on the most. But I do think and we have coordinated with them on the SPAT challenge, working with them. So probably if we were to sit down and have thought about this more, we probably could list even more. I have been working on a traffic operation manual, the National Traffic Operation Manual, and have worked with David on reviewing some of the more pedestrian items that we just don't have the experience with. So that's what comes to mind. It's a pretty good list.
Yeah.
I actually add a Michigan perspective on TMC to TMC relationships. Okay. So I think it's important to have those relationships with your local, either whether it be a county TMC in our situation, or City of Detroit TMC, because whether it be special events, something completely unthought of happening, or a major flood or whatever it is, being able to have a relationship with that TMC and work with them, because oftentimes we don't control where traffic goes. They're going to go where they're either familiar with or where Google is taking them. And so being able to work with them and have that working relationship where they know the other person that they're talking to goes a long way towards helping get traffic moving in those types of situations. So I'm all for it. In terms of connecting the technology, we're looking at that, and that's also important. But in our situation, we have to deal with a lot of security issues with our data. And so it's not as easy as it might be in other areas. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but certainly the communication aspect is important.
And I did put Jennifer and David on the spot since you guys were on here, but we are doing with the ICMs. I know it's driving a lot more of those partnerships with I-85 in Gastonia and I-26 with the city of Asheville. I know a lot of the ICMs are driving those relationships a little bit more. So
Yeah, and I'll say that we have a lot of programs that we work together on, and that's kind of what Jennifer touched on. There is a lot of coordination between the two. We meet constantly with division and district staff, and we have good relationships with most everybody at NCDOT. And it's a lot of the programs do help out. I know that the result of our update to our Triangle Regional Plan for ITS is that there's going to be a lot more regionalization. And we see some of those programs that, fortunately for us, kind of geographically, the way things are laid out, we maintain and operate all the signals within Cary, so that includes state roads. And really the one freeway in our area, one interstate, I guess I should say, is a dividing line between us and Raleigh, neighboring municipality. So there's a really clear kind of jurisdiction between what the different groups are sort of overseeing. We do have 540 that runs through one side, but that's even weirder. But there's almost a clear divide. So and obviously traffic movement is regional. So people just don't stay on the interstate and just bypass right through Cary. They obviously get off and they do use surface streets to get around incidences. And I think that's where this the update that we have to recognize that traffic is like water. It will find its way to wherever it needs to go eventually. And recognizing that that's a multi-jurisdictional thing. And we definitely have opportunities to improve that day-to-day work. Whether that is just picking up a phone and calling folks, or whether that's data sharing, or whether that's automated. They're definitely, with technology now, there's definitely opportunities to improve on all of that.
Yeah, one final question, then I have a couple wrap-up notes I wanted to touch on. How about TMCs communicating across state lines, like Metrolina with South Carolina?
So I'll answer this. We have all of our TMCs in pretty much all of our neighboring states: Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia. They all have the contact, and they probably contact them several times a week, or maybe even a day, depending on where we have incidents. So there's a lot of communication, TMC to TMC, about anything that's on a border, and they coordinate with us as well. And we put up message signs if needed, and vice versa. And then during emergency, there are partners that we have in those states, particularly South Carolina and Georgia, that we have on speed dial, where we're trying to figure out what they're going to do that might affect our roadway network in North Carolina. So we do a lot of coordination, I would say, on a regular basis with states. Metrolina happens to be right on the border, and it's an urban area, so there's a lot of coordination between the South Carolina line, around South Carolina, and Metrolina. Sometimes that happens through the TMC there, and sometimes that happens through the statewide center, depending on what the issue is.
Yeah, we do here in Michigan too. I mean, we have the Great Lakes Regional Transportation Operations Center that includes all the states around in the Great Lakes region. And so messaging goes out to them when there's something that affects particular routes, especially ones that are like 94 and 75 that can affect state to state connections. So we communicate with them. All the other states are getting that information that are part of the GLRTOC notifications. And then we also have 4 international crossings in our area. And so there's a lot of communication with Canada, and maybe not Canada specifically, but those that are managing those international crossings. In some cases, that is Canada. And so, I'm sorry, we have 3 crossings. A 4th one's being built. I should clarify. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly important, and I think it depends on what the situation is. There's no reason not to.
Right. All right, I'm a big rule of three person, so I'm going to give you my three big takeaways from the conversation today. And the things that jumped out to me is, and this conversation has come up a lot recently. I like the term, the focus on use cases, because we do have a lot of the private sector coming up with all these cool tools and everything else. And we need to determine what is our use case and what is the benefit of this application? How are we going to use it? And Jorge, I really like how you actually go back to the private sector and say, that's cute, but give me a signal controller that's this size. Challenge the private sector to take it to that next level that meets your use case, and don't force fit a solution into your current operation. So use cases was my biggest one. And also following on that is benefit cost of the investments. When we talked about the video wall, we may have one hurricane where we can demonstrate the benefit cost of a video wall, or we may have a couple of special events where you can demonstrate that benefit. So we did talk about how they're not used day to day, but that benefit cost may be a few incidents within a year that really provide the benefit of that investment in the video wall or whatever investment that might be. My second big takeaway was the next generation of operators, the next generation of traffic specialists, traffic management specialists, and migrating them to active traffic management, which has been a big focus for a lot of agencies here recently, not just passively waiting until a crash happens and then doing something about it, but really being more active on it. I like that goal too, Aaron, that you mentioned. You're trying to capture 75% of the incidents that are occurring. You want the TMC to be aware of and involved in that. That's a pretty unique goal. I haven't heard a lot of states kind of say, let's measure that. Like, how many incidents are we missing? And my last one is emerging technologies are obviously evolving, even around connected vehicle. So we don't really have all the answers quite yet. But I think one of the things I heard today was partnering with the private sector on ways they can parse through that data and make that data more consumable for us. And we don't necessarily have to solve everything, but what are some of the tools out there that we can then lean on some of that private sector for this huge volume of big data that's coming at us? What are some good ways that we can use it? So with my three takeaways, I want to see if there's any final comments you guys have.
Well, I was just going to, again, thank the panel. I think this is really a really unique perspective to hear, again, from state and local agencies on the use of TMC and the future of TMC, and what's happening with emerging technology, and how that's going to shape what we do as traffic engineers or transportation professionals, multimodal, I like to say, transportation professionals. So again, I want to thank this group. I want to thank our moderator, Jeff, and I want to thank the community of practitioners here who showed up for today's presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And maybe next year I can come to Carolinas for this and get around a golfing while I'm there.
All right, we'll put you on the list. Reminder for everybody that's attending the social hour, 5:30. It's gonna kick off. There's a link in Whova to join the social hour. I believe we're also providing a second opportunity to access some of the vendors during that time as well. So you can go on the sponsor page, click on their links. If they have an active Zoom meeting or team meeting or whatever else that you can join, it'll be noted on the sponsor page in there. One thing I've noticed from this is I talk with my hands a lot. You all must be sitting on your hands because I feel like mine keep waving up in the camera. So thanks again to the panelists. Great conversation. Appreciate all your time and everything in there. There's trivia at 4:30. Sorry, did I say 5:30? I mean, sorry, social hour is 4:30. Social hour starting at 4:30. Yeah, it's being corrected in my chat. I got that wrong. So yeah, 4:30 to 6:30. Yeah, yes. It's your beer is not being shipped to your door. It is BYOB. But there are multiple activities going on with trivia, a few escape rooms, some other things going on, and visiting the vendors. So 4:30 to 6:30 is the social hours, 2 hours. So thank you again for the time. Great session.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks.